Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's move on to this story then. Gender violence expert Lisa Vetten today testified at the tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. Now, the High Court Secretary Andiswa Mengo has accused the judge of making unwanted sexual advances. Linda Mnisi is tracking the story for us and joins us live now. Linda, one thing's for sure, this case has certainly moved quite extensively. And now Lisa Vetten, a researcher specializing in gender equality there, being on the stand, but also being questioned with regards to her biases and her impartiality.
Absolutely, Arabile, and that's after, of course, she gave her testimony looking into, the assessment that she conducted and the analysis on the material that she was given. And she spent the day really going through the nuances of the complex power dynamics as well as workplace interactions and, using them in the context of the WhatsApp messages and the interactions between Andiswa Mengo as well as the Judge President of the Eastern Cape High Court, Selby Mbenenge, and really testifying about how the issue of consent and submission cannot really be put together, and that there needs to be a very clear line when it comes to issues of consent. It needs to be meaningful, it needs to be substantive, and should not be mistaken for submission. And also talking about, Arabile, the issue around the power dynamics, and that a person cannot say no to somebody that is more senior in fear of the consequences that may arise. Looking at the interaction between the Judge President as well as Andiswa Mengo, she reached a conclusion that there were indeed blurred lines in terms of the interactions there, because in a workspace environment, it's regulated such that there is a clear line between professional as well as personal interactions. And when looking at these WhatsApp messages, she found that there was a blurring of those particular lines. But of course, ultimately, the question is whether or not Andiswa Mengo was a willing participant. But she speaks really about the strategy that she used based on the WhatsApp messages, saying that she would be evasive, she would postpone some of the requests that were made by the Judge President, and that sometimes she would give, an answer. But of course, ultimately, she found that she was not a willing participant. Take a listen to how she put it.
She comes across as reluctant and unenthusiastic, and always busy with something else. I don't know how much clearer you can be than when you say no to somebody. And that is said a couple of times. No, that's not possible. It's not going to happen. So, you can see that there is somebody staking boundaries. And just the fact that if somebody persistently asks you for something and you don't give it to them, you don't want to. So this comes across as reluctant and unwilling and outright no.
Interesting testimony indeed here then, Linda. One thing's for sure, on the other side of this then, you saw Moses Kalkane towards the latter part even really just trying to showcase just perhaps inconsistencies, some would say, how things could be viewed in a totally different light here. And as I said a little bit earlier, her impartiality and biases.
Yeah, well, he started off by setting up a couple of criteria, or a criteria really in terms of what an expert witness is and what the expectation is, particularly in proceedings like the tribunal, and then of course looking at the scope of work and what the witness was given in terms of the material to go to, and basically arguing that the crux of whether or not there's been a proper assessment of the material that has been given is in looking at where the evidence of the complainant is tested. And this is not the case in this instance because, like she indicated, she was not given the answering affidavit of the respondent, and that is Judge Mbenenge. But of course, she does indicate that the primary focus or primary analysis was based on the WhatsApp messages, and these are messages between Judge Mbenenge as well as Andiswa Mengo. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Analysis is not objective if you declare that your analysis is based on reading one aspect that's untested. That's all I'm saying to you.
My analysis is predominantly focused on the WhatsApps. My analysis is predominantly focused on the WhatsApps, which is what you have and what the complainant has. You will test my version under cross-examination.
No, I agree. All I'm saying is that when you don't have the totality of the record, it has an impact on the intellectual output, which is what is required here. We actually could have called anyone if we wanted views of people who sympathize with men who harass or victims who are harassed. We could have called anybody. We could have called a journalist. We could have called anybody. We called you. You were called. And we respected that you are called. Because you are going to offer us what an intellectual should offer, why you are a cut above us, it's because you read everything, including what does not make your case. That's what makes you different from us. We read what we like, we discard what we don't.
All right, Linda, thank you so much for that. I believe proceedings will indeed kick off tomorrow morning as well at 9:30. So, of course, you'll continue to check in on that for us. Then appreciate it as well for that reporting. Of course, a long-standing case when it comes to the Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge there.